Welcome to the Roswell Business Podcast. Today we interview Kyle Bullock. A little bit about his life, his businesses, and wise words to live by. Enjoy. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, Kyle, coming and spending some time with me and risking a few moments of your life to be open and talk a little bit about who you are.
Are we safe here?
Yeah, this is going into special archives. I actually work for the FBI. Yeah.
No, I knew this was a bust.
Yeah.
Breaking social distancing.
Yeah. So be careful what you say.
Okay.
Everything can and what? No, just kidding. Seriously though, I've had the privilege of getting to know you the past several years, some at a distance, some in conversation, some even in productions out at the theater, and being able to see you guys help grow a local business there, as well as your own personal business through your family, and just a lot of neat things that you guys do in our city. And we're proud to have you and your family here.
Thanks.
And I've been a patron of the store, which we'll talk about a little bit later, since I was in high school.
We appreciate it.
So, I don't go there a lot, but when I do, I enjoy it and I appreciate it. So I'm not a needy person with a lot of things. So that kind of creates an issue there. But anyway, tell us a little bit. Obviously, our format, we like to hear our guests, who they are, what makes them up. Where do you come from? What's your story? What makes Kyle who he is?
Oh, wow. Let's just give you at least the highlights, and you can dig what you like. But I'm a lifelong born and raised Roswell native. So my family goes back in Roswell till like the early 1900s. My great grandfather came out here and started the jewelry company that I'm now a co-owner of. But I was born here, raised here. I lived in West Texas for about 4 or 5 years, going to college and then starting a career out there, and then, tractor beamed back to home. And I enjoyed doing other things outside of jewelry. It was always something that I was always raised doing jewelry. I learned sales and I learned, the trade as a teenager. But my formal study is in psychology with some master's work in leadership.
Wow. You took a real easy course then.
Yeah, no math, no easy papers, just make it up.
Yeah,
so no,
funny.
I did some of that for a while, and I had great fun. In fact, the funny story is after I had graduated my undergraduate, I was in grad school, newly married. First career, I wanted nothing to do with the jewelry industry, because I actually... Wow. After I'd left working at Bullock's in high school, I'd worked in another jewelry-related industry in college and had a terrible experience. And I don't want to do anything like that. And so I worked in higher ed at my alma mater, doing university advancement, fundraising, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they found my history with jewelry, and so they put me in charge of the ring program there. And it was like, well, great, I'm going to go back home if I'm going to do this. So. But anyways, I came back home. I've been in Roswell since about 2014.
Yeah.
When we moved back here, and finding our way here ever since. Yeah.
So let's talk about the beginnings. Obviously, you said that the business has been here since the early 1900s. I know Roswell was late 1800s, so it's not too far distant.
Yeah.
From formation years.
I don't remember when my great grandfather made it out here, but So he started the company in 1926.
Okay.
And I know he was here in 1917. I met his wife, and they married here. We actually have the old Roswell Daily Record paper with their announcement hanging in our office. So that was 1917, I believe.
Okay.
No, that would be early 1920s. I'm getting it mixed up, but it was around that period of time that I know he came out here.
Yeah.
And I don't have a clue why he came out here. I'm trying to actually figure that out.
So your family was here just under about 20 years before mine began.
Really?
In the 30s. So, wow, how cool is that? So the store, if memory serves, has it been at that exact location since it opened?
No.
Or
actually, so really, there's only 2 locations it was at. Before we were a block. See, we were a block north from 26 till about 55.
Okay.
And then we moved into the location we're at now around the mid 1950s.
Okay.
Been there ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
For those listeners that don't know, they're right on downtown Main Street, and their name has been synonymous with the Main Street culture for as long as I can remember, obviously, and as long as I've been alive.
It's neat because I've actually been going back into some pictures back in the day. So we're okay. So of course you know this, but for listeners, Roswell is 2nd and Main. That's the heart of town. It's 2 major highways right there. So we're almost right on 2nd and Main, or 2nd and Main. There's some old pictures that take us way back, of course, to the 50s and earlier in that area. And so you see the evolution of what the store looks like. But we have so there's an old employee that worked for my dad many years ago that used to say we were the 3rd pony in a 3-pony race because we were the small fry for years. And right across the street was Huff's Jewelry.
Okay.
And then there was about 3 all within a few blocks, and we were the small guy.
Wow.
And of course, over time they disappeared, and things have changed, and the places evolved. So, kind of looking at those pictures, it's neat to see the evolution of Roswell and us all around it. It's a neat timeline. Yeah, a lot of history in those walls. So,
yeah. And of course, your dad carried on with that and has made a name for himself in the city, and just his generosity. And one of his trademarks is just this glorious smile when you talk to him. Always, it's just always there, and it's been a neat presence in the city. And was your granddad the same way?
I have no idea. My granddad died in 1976.
Okay.
Which we might talk about later because it relates to something I've been working on, trying to find out more about my family.
Yeah.
But so he died in 76 from a brain tumor. My dad was 17.
Okay.
And he had a younger brother and my grandmother. And my grandmother she didn't know how to run the store. So my dad started running the company in 1976 as a 17-year. Yeah. He would go to school. It was DECA program. So you could go to school early in the morning. You take your 2 classes, and he would wear his suit and 3-piece suit back then.
Yeah.
And then go straight to work and run a company all day.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he did that. He's been, of course, since 76. So he's been doing this a long time.
Right.
Yeah. But as far as I know, you asked about my grandfather. I mean, from what I can tell, there's a whole lot that I want to know about him and like what he went through. Because so my great grandfather and my grandfather, their careers saw them through Depression, Dust Bowl, total World War, civil rights movements. I mean, these seismic historic moments that affected our community. The base closure in the 60s, which was a huge deal in our community. I know, 1/3 of our town disappears.
Right.
So, when we're facing things like we are today, right now we're all in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic and the fears and trials going through that. I look back at what those guys went through, and I'm like, I can't even fathom what they were going through and how they survived all these years. It gives me a lot of optimism.
Yeah.
And a lot of encouragement, because man, if they could do it all those years ago, now with what we can do today, I mean, it's that endurance that you get from knowing the stories of your history that help keep you going.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good encouraging word to any of us that owning and operating businesses and have the weight of that on us. Not to minimize the workers.
Yeah.
But the workers go back to work when those of us that provide the jobs for them get them back in that place, and that's a tough thing.
And it's scary, when you're sitting around in your office thinking, okay, am I even going to have anything for anybody to do in a few weeks or months? Am I even going to be around?
Right.
And then you think of all the faces that will be affected by what happens to your company. It's not just you. It's not just the Bullock family. It's a lot of families that we work with that we consider as they're my family. I mean, I'm close. I'm so close with my team that they are like my family. So the weight of these types of things, where it wears on you. And then
is that how you draw some of your strength to figure it out and find your way?
First terror, and panic, and then you breathe.
Yeah.
And you don't give yourself an option.
Good.
But
I like
man,
that.
it's amazing to see how pandemics, well, this pandemic in particular, we're going to give the disclaimer already because we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, but there's some people who are going to be affected in many different ways, and not everybody's affected the same. And there's some really tragic stuff happening to people in many different ways. So I don't want to minimize any of that, but I'm a silver linings guy. So looking at the way my view of my life, my career, my work, my team has changed in the last 2 months has been seismic. It's radical.
Wow.
It's one of those wake up calls that's like, that puts first things first. That there's things much more important than profit or sales or writing paycheck even. And there's things much deeper than that. And it's been a wake up call to kind of put your head on straight, and that's been the motivation that has kept me going to think and innovate, to put first things first and figure out what really matters.
Right.
Not do the things that don't,
Okay. Well, in our format, we'll revisit that a little bit when
Sure.
we get to the end, just some of the things that you're learning and some of the insights and wisdom that's coming out of all of that, which is always, that's the stuff I love the most. But each phase of our interviews, each time, I sure enjoy hearing, about the people and so forth. So what made you go towards psychology? That's a huge shift. You grew up around a business owner family, and then suddenly, not to minimize what psychologists do or any of that kind of stuff, but it's not the same as a retail business.
Yeah.
It's a very different.
And funny as it is, so I use it all the time. I mean, it's been such a handy thing to know. And I think it's such an essential thing people need to learn from early ages, is how our brains develop.
Yeah.
But what got me interested in it was a TV show.
Huh.
And it was so compelling that I had to do it. I never wavered. So it was a show on TV. I think it was like on Fox or something, but it was a show called Lie to Me. Do you remember the show?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so those of you who don't know it, it was this psychologist who could read people's faces and tell when they were lying. So he solves mysteries and crimes and stuff.
Right.
And I just thought it was so cool. I was, in high school as this thing's coming out, and I remember looking it up, and it's a real guy. I mean, not the stories weren't real, but the real science. That there's a guy named Paul Ekman who figured all this out, and I dug into it, and I loved the theories, and so that sold me. That's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
And long story short, went to college, and I started doing psychology. So about the first half or more of my college career, I was doing like clinical psychology. So actually, I had served as sort of some research, even here in our community, research for after school programs and like the Assurance Home that takes homeless and at-risk teenagers here in our community.
Program, yeah.
I mean, I worked a summer there that changed my life. But I also realized I couldn't do clinical psychology because I just don't have the wherewithal to wear some of the burden of the hard things you're going to see. So I'm a huge advocate for especially kids in those programs, and taking care of them is essential. But about halfway through my college career, I switched to do what's called industrial psychology, which is psychology of the workplace and best practices. And then that fed into a leadership master's that I went into because I just want to figure out how people function.
Yeah.
And how, if you can, you can learn math and you can learn science, knowing how people function is like learning how to apply all that other stuff into something practical. And it's been fun. I still absorb as much of that field as I can because I find it so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we might transition just a little bit, just because it kind of segues there. If there's more things that you talk about who you are, that's totally fine as we go through. But I know that you're an author and a writer and things like that. Do you find yourself drawing a lot on your psychology background in that process?
Yeah. All the time. Psychology is applicable to everything. I mean, absolutely everything. And I'm not going to bunny trail, but even look at the current world of the pandemic we're in.
Yeah.
I think the greatest one of the greatest threats that we face, aside from health or economics, one of the greatest ones that we face is the psychology of what's happening to people. Fear, panic, all that drives people's actions, and it makes us do some crazy things.
Right.
Knowing how to lead people into something healthier is like essential. So in terms of writing and producing, creating, so all my acting education came from psychology. I took one acting class in college, but when you sit there and you learn how faces move and bodies act and move, that's what acting is. So that was a foundation for that, and then all my stories are just thinking about how people of different backgrounds and personalities interact with each other. I use it all the time, in everything, but especially in creating stories.
So even though it's not a career, it was worth the investment.
Yes. Yeah. Psychology. Yeah, you bet. Like I said, I think everybody should learn it.
Yeah.
Leaders especially should absorb as much as you can, because we are not as unique as we might think we are. We do things in patterns. We do things for reasons that are deeply inside of us, and we think we're individuals, and we are, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. I wish more people would dig into at least a simple level of understanding of how people think, because that's so vital.
Yeah.
A big thing for me this year has been on the subject of empathy. And the only way you can do that is putting yourself in their shoes. And I don't think we do that enough. So I appreciate hearing what you're saying.
I'm terrible at it. I work with an empath who's just like just has that God-given gift to love people. Yeah. And it's not to sound callous, but it takes a workout for me to like stop and think about empathetically what that person's experiencing. And it's eye-opening. You're like, oh, that person has things going on in their life that matter, and I should probably wake up to those things more. Right. So I learn a lot from her.
Wow, that's really cool. So we'll transition in. You're actually working at the family business now.
Yeah.
What does that entail?
Some days it's involving a lot of duct tape and glue to keep it together, right? It's what it feels like. Yeah. But no, my dad, when we first came together, he was like thinking about retiring because he's been doing this. Now he's been doing it for over 45 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
And he's going, I don't want to do this forever. Yeah. And I want to figure out what's next. So when I came in, that's sort of the tone. And in the last few years, it's evolved to my dad might work 3 or 4 days a week. And so
nice.
It's my job to, keep everything else, sort of take over what he was running. Okay. And so, it's anything from personnel to actually sitting there creating, crafting, repairing, selling. You become the everything guy, and you're a small business owner, you do everything, and so you also have to think about what are things that I can give to somebody else to do. And so I'm finding myself doing a lot more of that. Trying to find as much as I can do to give to somebody else. A great day, an ideal day at work is when everybody on my team is doing something in their strength zone. Yeah. And I'm in my office going, okay, what do I do now? How do I help these people? Because I've given away my work. Nice. And that's my goal. I want to empower as many people in my team as I can to do what they're great at. Wow. So
that's really cool.
Well, thanks.
Well, it's
because I spent years of not doing that and stressing out, acting like I was some sort of like great.
Well, I hear so many people talk about that, but you hear all the stories of the workers saying, well, they say all this in the meeting, but their actual application is they really don't give us the freedom to do what we need to do.
Which maybe my staff might watch this and be like, yeah, dude, come on.
But you hope not.
I hope
sounds
not.
Like
I'm trying. I really am.
That's really cool. Yeah. Well, it's important, and I think when we value people properly, which I'm hearing you say, it just makes a big difference. Walking into your store, there's always a good energy, and that's that says a lot.
Thank you. I want it to feel like you're walking into our home. Yeah. Because for me, it's been home. I mean, I have Christmas memories in that place. I have holiday memories in that place. Family in that place. So it is home to me in a way. So I hope other people feel at home.
So you're also an author. Mm-hmm. What led you into that?
I always liked writing, and the first pieces where I did a play and a book early on in college, about the same time, and it came about because I wanted to work through some grief I was dealing with. I had lost all of my grandparents. That whole generation died within about a year.
Wow.
And I was trying to make sense of some of their lives. So I wrote a book loosely based on my grandfather's experiences in World War II, and then I did a play about my grandmother and my grandfather on the Bullock side, that, you know, their love story. So those were the first things. And man, it was, call it God ordained or dumb luck or whatever, but the book did well. And then the play actually got picked up to be performed, and I actually got to see it, which I didn't know at the time. It's a big deal. Like, those plays don't get picked up.
There's a lot.
I didn't know.
Just
In fact, it won this festival, and I was like, great, whatever. And they go, yeah, we're gonna perform it. And I had no idea what that meant. So I got thrown into that a little bit, and I loved that. It's also incredibly painful. I think you might know, because you're a creative.
Yeah.
You literally create your heart, and you let people hold it and play with it and then criticize it.
Right.
It hurts, but you're addicted to it. And so that spun off on, I've done books, plays, some film stuff. Currently, we're releasing a podcast right now about my family and the Roswell connection and the story here. And those are all, there's just something in me, I don't know how else to put it, that I have to be creative.
Yeah.
And I have to tell stories. I love telling stories. And one thing that's been new for me, and it came about because of the pandemic, was I'm sitting around, you know, we're shut down. And so for a while there, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. And to make a really long story short, I also stumbled into voiceover acting.
Yeah.
And so I began auditioning, and I've gotten several deals to record other people's stories. And so I've been doing a lot of audiobooks on like Audible and stuff like that. And to take the focus off of me, I found such life in that, because I'm also discovering the stories other people create that are just as personal, and they trust me to tell them. And man, that is so much fun.
Wow.
You know, creative people are really a blessing to our world, especially at a time like this, where they can tell their stories and let people take something so personal and enjoy it. And I find such joy in helping other people do that now. It's a blast. I love it.
I know you don't just go behind the stage or behind the screen. You actually spend some time in front of it as well.
Yeah, acting and performing. Yeah, I've done. My wife and I met doing musical theater, and I had no interest in it until college, where I was told it was like career day, or, you know, first day, orientation day, and my buddy and I were told, hey, if you sign up to be in the fall musical, you'll meet a lot of pretty girls. And we were like, count me in. I was in.
Wow.
So yeah, that's
so vanity got you in.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it did. The first musical we performed, I didn't even know what the musical was about until opening night.
Okay.
So I wasn't concerned at all with what was on stage. And then I you know, so yeah, that's how we met. And then it's another addiction that you just.
So it worked.
Yeah, it worked great. It worked really well, personally and professionally.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that side of the story. That's really fun.
Yeah.
How funny is that?
Of course, my wife is super talented. She's, you know, singer and
incredible.
performer, and she has brought me along on a lot of those endeavors. But yeah, it was, you know, acting, writing, performing. It was an accident, I guess.
Wow.
Or it was my young boyhood vanity that just wanted to meet
Yeah.
girls.
We might lean a little bit more on providential
Yeah, that might's a better word.
movement, right? That you just didn't see coming.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll call
Fair
it that.
enough.
Yeah.
All right. So we've touched on several areas of your life, of things that you do. What else is on your plate? I know, I think I hit the highlights. But if you have spare time, what is it that you find yourself, I want to tackle that?
Oh, you know, spare time is something I'm fighting for more of in my life. So if I'm not working, my priority is being with my family, raising. We have a 2-year-old son, And watching him grow up and learn is so great. And I mean, it's wonderful. I cherish that so much, and I am becoming more. I envy more of that time. Again, I hate to keep going back to the pandemic, but for me, it was a seismic change in my paradigm, how I saw the world, because suddenly I had all this time again with my son, with my wife, and you're quarantined and you can't do anything, and the first few days of selfishness say, oh, I should panic and worry.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching him watch me and thinking that I need to change what I'm doing.
Wow.
And I'm not doing it great. I'm trying, and I want to get better. So
that's good.
Spare time is family, it's friends, it's putting people I love closest to me first, and in my time, and also resting. I mean, for goodness sakes, I can easily be a workaholic.
Okay.
So I fight for. I have to put on my calendar time to rest. And,
wow.
Yeah, that's my spare time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I have hobbies, but now it involves how can I incorporate that with my family? Whether we go to the mountains and go hiking, or my son is just discovering video games. And
he's two.
At 2. It starts early now.
Wow.
And he's terrible at them all right now.
Okay.
But we have this old vintage, game cabinet with Pac-Man and stuff.
Okay.
I'm training him the right way. You don't start with the new stuff.
Yep, that's how I grew up.
Galaga, Pac-Man, that's what he's
speaking
all
my
about.
language.
Yeah. We're starting that. He can do some of that a little bit. So,
nice.
When you can bring other people that you love to what you do, that's the best. Yeah.
How cool is that? And what a cool thing at this phase of your family, the lesson that you've learned this year, and the value of that, and how that will carry forward as you grow in business and all your other things. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I take no credit for it. It's all it was thrust into this situation, but you don't get time back.
Right.
One investment that you don't get back.
Right.
So use it wisely and cherish it, love it. So
that's really, really good. So let's talk a little bit about that. You did a little bit there, but over the years, you've been blessed with a family of doers, and so that always every doer family that I talk to, and of course people from different backgrounds, you get different things, but especially the doer families. There's unique things that transfer from generation to generation, and statements and things like that. What have been some of those that have really stuck with you?
Wow. That have been passed down. My family, especially my dad's side of the family, never been much in the way of talking a whole lot. I mean, we're personable, but we're not like Gabby kind of talking, but I watch them a lot.
Yeah.
And again, watching the examples of my great-grandfather and my grandfather, I have learned the value of grit, that you've got to learn how to endure some hard seasons and get back up. And the secret of that is just the value of doing it, first of all, but also having people that help pick you up.
Okay.
And that family is one of those things that never leaves you. You pick each other up because you're family. You're my wife, my son, our faith is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
That your church family, those that you love, we will fight for them and they will fight for us.
Yeah.
That's a tenet that was never spoken in any word or phrase, but that was definitely handed down to me. And then recently, he's actually retired now, and you might know him, but Dennis Odom is someone who worked for us for 20 years, and he just retired.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this year.
Yeah, he's almost been synonymous with the name.
Yeah, yeah, he's been with us for a long time, and incredibly hard worker, but one of the most positive people I've ever known and worked with. And he in many ways has mentored me. And if you ever ask Dennis how he's doing, he'll tell you, man, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. And
Yeah.
the reason he says that is because it is all good, even the bad. It's a matter of perspective.
Like that a lot.
Yeah, it's perspective. I don't know that I subscribe to the kind of a quasi self-help philosophy of just positive thinking gets you
Sure.
places. It can do a lot for you. But so to use a verse from the Bible, I think in Philippians, Paul talks about he learned to be content in all things,
Right.
good and bad. He's in prison when he says this.
Right.
And I don't think Paul is trying to get positive thinking going. I think what he's trying to do is say that contentment, this was a quote this week I heard from a mentor of mine. He said, contentment is not about you being comfortable. Contentment is not about the things you have. Gratitude, real spiritual gratitude, is not saying, well, I love these things that I have and I'm blessed because of these things. It's not about things.
Yeah.
It's about saying, what is God doing right now? And whatever God is doing, I'm grateful for that.
Wow.
And when you learn to be grateful and be grateful for what God is doing, not what he's given you, but what
That's
he's
good.
doing, then gratefulness turns into contentment. Contentment turns into a complete change of worldview. And you do say, man, it is all good.
Yeah.
And so I try to adopt what Dennis said for 20 plus years on the job, and taught me every day that he came in, he always said, man, it's all good.
Love that.
Love it.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I love your definition of it too. That's powerful. That's keeping.
Yeah.
We should all learn how to just embrace that nonstop.
Well, and I give Dennis the credit for teaching me that and showing me that
Yeah.
and helping me try to live it out now.
Yeah. I love how you, because that's why I love throwing these questions out there, because each person's answers and their perspectives will bring insights to things. And, a lot of the things that we pick up in life aren't what was said, it was what was done. And that's a neat thing that you can grab onto that example and that kind of stuff out there. And obviously now you're talking about passing it on to the generation behind you, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Life is good.
What are some, especially, so you've been in professional business with the family since 2014?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, going on 7 years here soon. What are some tips, tricks, tidbits, bites of wisdom, whatever that come to mind when you go, man, from this is what I would, if someone was starting a business or just going out there, or they were just jumping in like you did, what would be some things that you would throw their way?
I jumped in, but I got caught by the right people. I don't know that there's any substitute in the world for the right people in your life.
Wow.
I struggle a lot with pride and arrogance.
Okay.
That I don't even recognize. And so having the right people there to anchor me to reality. When I first started in the jewelry industry, really professionally, because I've always been in it.
Yeah.
But when I really came back to run the company, I think I wanted to exude an air of, I know how to do this.
Wow.
And I can figure it out. Just leave me alone. And I ate a lot of crow, and I put my foot in my mouth, and it hurt. I think I realized it when I would get knocked down. I would get so tired and so exhausted, and my wife would look at me like, "Why are you even doing this?
Wow.
This is crazy." And went through some really hard seasons. Being in a family business, is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But for anybody who wants a tip from whatever I can give them, I think you will only be as great as the people who are leading you. I have this philosophy I call the followership model of leadership. You will follow whoever you're following, and that person will follow whoever they're following, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, I hope people follow the Lord, but you need mentors and leaders in your life that do that. So my dad was an early mentor in this profession. And there was a guy in the jewelry industry, his name was Ted, who taught me the most authentic way to sell to people without being a pushy sales guy. And has lived on to me one of the greatest salesmen I have ever known.
Wow.
And I think that's who I want to be like. So lately, I want to think about looking around and going, because a lot of those people now, I mean, obviously my dad's still working with me, but there's a lot of people that move out of the industry or they move on in your life, or you don't see them anymore. So I always look for people that I go, who do I want to be like? Whether it's in the jewelry industry or not, why do I want to be like them? And then how do I learn from that person? And so if you're starting a company or you've been in the company, you're leading or leading an organization, look at the people you want to be like and follow that person.
Wow.
I have a leadership consultant that he's my business mentor. I talk to him every couple of weeks.
Okay.
And his job is just to help me grow. And he's a wise man. And I seek those guys out now. And I think anybody should do the same if you want to really learn how to do whatever you're doing well with authenticity. So,
love that. People that are around me much will hear me quote this a lot, but Ed Milet says, you'll do all kinds of other things in life with coaching, but for whatever reason, you forget to have coaches for your own life.
It's true.
And the vitality of that changes who you could be. And I'm hearing you echo that very clearly. Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It's funny because, you say that, and I thought, I think one of the hindrances that people have in finding those mentors is that you can at least I can feel this way. I feel a little pretentious doing that, trying to find somebody to mentor you, be my coach. You're like, well, I don't need someone to do that for me. And so it's this pride that kind of gets in your way.
Yeah.
And yet the truth is quite the opposite, that seeking those people out is a matter of humbling yourself. To say, not to toot my horn, is to humble yourself to say, I don't know what I don't know, and I think you do. Can you help me?
Love that.
Yeah. Hopefully we can break down those barriers of pride. Pride's a nasty thing, right?
It's scary, isn't it? Especially when you see it in yourself.
Yeah, it's awful.
We find it quickly in others,
Yes.
but when you see it in the mirror, you're like, oh, yeah. And it's so important. My goodness, I've been the same way. I think all of us as creatives, when I'm sitting in a director's chair and I get people to get frustrated with actors or things like that, I'll say to them, look, the very thing that makes them good at what they're at is also their greatest weakness when they're not in charge of it, because you need that ego to get stuff done. If you're going to be a business owner, you need an ego. I can do it. I can make it. But you also need to be able to say, I can't do it here.
Yeah.
And then that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you say that, and how cool is it? Have you even left your 20s yet?
I'm still in my 20s.
Okay. So
hanging on.
So here you are in your 20s and already grasping this.
Yeah.
That's huge, because by the time you hit my age, you'll have had so much practice at it. How amazing that what you'll be able to accomplish with these things that God's birthed in you is incredible. And that's just, anyway, you've encouraged me today with that, because we need to be reminded on that regularly. So what is it about Roswell? Why, granted, you've got a history of a family and stuff like that, but you could have gone a lot of different places. You're very well talented. Why come back and risk it in this odd place that is world famous and yet still very, very small and obscure and odd?
I want to add, so this, I just have to point this out because I haven't really thought about it until recently, but It's funny that we asked that about people in Roswell.
Yeah.
You don't usually hear people ask that about other places.
Yeah.
Like, why did you choose Lubbock of all places to live, or Dallas? And that struck me recently, and I'll get to that. But what brought me back to Roswell is not necessarily a pretty thing for me to admit.
Okay.
But the truth was, I was at a conference, a psychology conference, business psychology conference. It was late in college, going into my grad degree, and me and this other guy got a chance. That we went to this conference. We got a chance to meet like the top guy in the field. Had a conversation with him, give us advice. And he was tired. You could tell he was tired and worn out. And we said, man, give us any advice on how to be successful consultants in this industry. And he said, you know what I think you should do? You're grad students? I said, yeah. He said, drop out of college, go work for the landfill picking up people's trash. Do that for 20 years, and then you can retire and do whatever you want. And we were like crushed. We're like,
Wow.
What? What was that? What was that? And his friend laughed, and she goes, he always says that because he's a grunt. But
Yeah.
she said his point is everybody wants the corner office suite that looks over the lake. Everybody wants it. And everybody goes there.
Yeah.
Nobody's applying for the trash job, but
Right.
everybody wants their trash taken out. And she said, fundamentally what that means is go not where it's always pretty, but where there's opportunity to do good work.
Nice.
And then I learned later to learn do good work and do good work done well. That's the Christian way.
Yeah.
So that sentiment sort of carried me back to Roswell. I
Okay.
didn't want to come back. I wanted to stay in Lubbock, or I wanted to go to Seattle or Chicago and these other grad programs. Didn't work out that way because I said I'm going to come home. And the first few years that I lived here, my wife and I are like, why did we do that? That was crazy. This was a bad idea. But now I see Roswell in a very different way.
Yeah.
It's a place full of potential, very little risk, low cost of living, family connections. Yes, there are things that we can be frustrated at ourselves about, but I think Roswell has an identity crisis issue.
Okay.
We don't see ourselves with a whole lot of esteem, and that's a shame because we have some of the greatest. We have access to the mountains, we have access to the plains, to the white. We have all these national parks here.
Right.
This is a great place to live if you want it to be. And the key is deciding that you want it to be that way.
Nice.
So, like, for example, in this new podcast that I put out, it's about my family and some history and the Roswell lore, and there's some crazy stuff about eyewitnesses to the UFO. But the reality was that story, or rather telling that guy's story and telling that podcast is my love letter to Roswell to say, we are kind of victims of our own demise.
Nice.
Please look at what is so great about this community. And I do love it, even though it can frustrate me.
Sure.
I love it now a lot more because it enables me to do what I'm doing now and love my family in a way that I couldn't do in big cities.
Yeah.
So, it started as a trash job, but I found it to me, this is my corner office suite, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now.
Love that. Love that. Well, we've probably got about 10 minutes left on this, so let's explore just a couple of things just for fun. You mentioned a podcast. What you hit just kind of the basics of it, but what's entailed in that? Why do this?
So the podcast is called Crashed in Roswell.
Okay.
And we just started releasing this show. It started as a journey for me to look back into my family's history. It goes back, of course, way, way back in Roswell. And I did not know my grandfather. I didn't know my great-grandfather. And so with all of this that I'm going through, I really wanted to explore who they were, what lineage they passed on to me.
Okay. So is it factual based
there's
story,
there's a lot of history going back into my family's history. It does lead me to an interview that I can't talk a whole lot about because you just have to listen to the show. But it leads me to an interview that connects to my family's lineage that is really a tragic story. It ends up being a very tragic story of a man who experienced stuff in Roswell early on. And so that's where for me the podcast kind of, when I was doing the research for it, it shifted, and it became this story that it's this guy's story, but it's also it's my love letter to Roswell about who we are. People in Roswell need to know who we are and where we came from to understand why we are the way we are. Yeah. And if you understand that, then there are things that become a lot less frustrating. Yeah. So I hope people, it's getting listens, of course, all over the world, and we're getting messages every day of people's stories from their heritage. Yeah. And that's really cool to see people digging back into their history to find out connections to Roswell. So
how cool. You're able to do something that's both and the right kind of selfish, but yet still impact other people at the same time. That
it's fun.
That's
really
enjoy
neat.
It. Yeah. Well, for the listeners and the people that are out there, I'm assuming you're reachable and that you want people to connect and stuff like that. How would they go about that?
So You can't miss me if you're driving downtown because my name is outside on the front marquee. But at Bullock's Jewelry, we're right there. You can find us at bullocksjewelry.com. I do have a personal website that kind of encompasses all that I do, from the jewelry side all the way to voice acting, performing, writing. So kylerBullock.com.
So if they heard and liked what they were at and they wanted to read some of your writings, they can pick it up through there?
Absolutely.
Okay. And links to the podcast and all that?
Absolutely. Yeah. kylerBullock.com. You can even reach out to me and contact me directly from there, and I'm happy to talk to whoever about whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you had thought about coming on to the podcast, was anything that we didn't cover today, or topics, or just because of our conversation, you're like, ooh, I'd love to reference this or talk about that?
Man, I just like talking to you. You're easy to talk to. So, if I could end it, capstone it with anything, and it's maybe continuing the thought about all those Roswellians who might be watching this.
Yeah.
And our state's kind of in this frustrating situation where we don't always agree with each other, and it's a frustrating place to be. And there's people out there who are wondering, man, why did I live here? And think about what Dennis says. It's all good, and that's a matter of perspective. What we've been gifted through a very trying period in all of our lives is an opportunity to decide what we want the future to look like.
Yeah.
And you can be a victim of your situation, and sometimes you can't control things that are happening to you. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
But there are some things you can control. And one of the things we all have the ability is to control the ability to have a future that we want to have, and a city that we love. And one of the ways we do that is through good civil discourse. Understanding we're different, we're not always going to agree. And sometimes it's a matter of going, man, I appreciate your viewpoint, though I don't meet you there. And then you just do the work. You keep living on.
Wow.
And I really hope that we can have some leaders in our community who catch on to that and go, let's make this a place. Let's love ourselves and want this to be a place that people want to be. And that power is in our hands, not in mine. It's in everybody's. So I sure hope that's the way we take it.
Really appreciate you taking time and sharing your heart and a little bit of your story and all that. I get the privilege every time to hear people's lives, and it's so intriguing and so awesome, and you didn't disappoint today. So
thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
I hope so. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed today's program, subscribe to the platform you are on, YouTube or another podcast channel. That way you get notifications of upcoming releases. If you'd like to connect with me, go to DonovanFulkerson.com. You'll learn a lot about my life, my activities, online courses, our businesses, the things we have our hands in, and all the products that go along with those too. If you'd like to connect on social media, if you go to my personal pages, it's just that. You're going to get a lot of activity about myself, my personal thinking, as well as daily devotionals and spiritual content. As far as the business side goes, connect on those pages and you'll get everything from projects that we're working on, honoring other people, business advice and tips and tricks, as well as business wisdom and quotes. So wonderful content daily for you to follow. Thank you again for connecting. Please share this video and honor the people that are contributing to this great community, and we'll see you next time.